The sun beat down on the sleek, curved driveway as I pulled into my own home, unaware that my day was about to take an unexpected turn. Little did I know, a storm was brewing, one that would pit me against my neighbor, Karen, in an epic showdown over the very ground I stood on. This was no ordinary dispute. This was a clash of wills, a battle of wits, where the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. As I stepped out of my car, I had no idea the nightmare that was about to unfold. But one thing was certain, the outcome would change everything. The moment I saw Karen strutting towards me, I knew trouble was afoot. Her lips were pursed, her brow furrowed, and her eyes narrowed with a determination that sent a chill down my spine. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, gesturing wildly at the sleek, curved driveway that led to my front door. "I'm sorry, what are you talking about?" I asked, caught off guard by her sudden aggression. "This driveway," she spat. "It's an eyesore, a blight on the neighborhood. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let you ruin the aesthetic of this community." I blinked, stunned by her outburst. But this driveway was designed by NASA engineers to be both functional and visually appealing. I protested, hoping to reason with her. Karen let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "NASA engineers, please don't insult my intelligence. This is clearly some half-baked attempt to be different and unique. Well, I've got news for you. It's not working." She stepped closer, her finger jabbing into my chest. "You have 1 week to tear this monstrosity up and replace it with something more suitable. If you don't, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association. And trust me, you do not want to mess with me." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed off, leaving me standing there, dumbfounded and unsure of what to do next. Had I really just been threatened by my own neighbor over the design of my driveway? This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of twisted joke. But as I replayed the encounter in my mind, I knew that Karen was dead serious. She had drawn a line in the sand, and I had no choice but to stand my ground. NASA had worked painstakingly to create this driveway, and I wasn't about to let some overbearing busybody take that away from me. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I hurried inside and began digging through my files, searching for the paperwork that documented the driveway's design and approval process. If Karen thought she could bully me into submission, she had another thing coming. This was my home, my property, and I was going to fight for it, no matter what it took. As I pored over the documents, a plan began to form in my mind. I would need to gather evidence, build a case, and go toe-to-toe with Karen in the Homeowners Association meeting. This was no longer just about a driveway. It was about standing up for my rights, my home, and my self-respect. And I wasn't about to back down without a fight. The night before the Homeowners Association meeting, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with scenarios, each one more stressful than the last. What if Karen had allies on the board? What if they outvoted me despite the facts? The stakes felt impossibly high. When the day arrived, I arrived early, clutching my folder of evidence like a life preserver. As the other residents filed in, I scanned the room, searching for familiar faces, any potential allies in this battle against Karen. Finally, the meeting began, and Karen wasted no time in taking the floor. "Neighbors," she began, her voice dripping with false concern, "I've called you all here today because there is a grave injustice that must be addressed." She launched into a tirade about my unsightly driveway, painting me as some sort of reckless rule breaker who had no regard for the community's aesthetic. I gripped the edge of my seat, my knuckles turning white, as I waited for my chance to respond. When she finally paused for breath, I stood up, my voice trembling slightly. "With all due respect, Karen, this driveway was designed by NASA engineers to be both functional and visually appealing. I have the paperwork right here to prove it." I began laying out the facts, one by one, highlighting the meticulous design process, the community approvals, and the benefits of the driveway's unique curved shape. As I spoke, I could see the expressions on the other residents' faces shift from uncertainty to intrigue. Karen, on the other hand, looked increasingly flustered. Well, she sputtered, that's all well and good, but it's still an eyesore. And I won't stand for it. Actually, Karen, a voice piped up from the back of the room, I quite like the driveway. It's a refreshing change from the same old boring designs we see everywhere else. I turned to see Mrs. Wilkins, the oldest and most respected member of the community, nodding in agreement. And if the NASA engineers approved it, then who are we to argue? I say we let it be. Murmurs of assent rippled through the room, and Karen's face fell as she realized her plan was unraveling. She opened her mouth to protest, but the board president quickly cut her off. Well, it seems the community has spoken. The driveway stays. This meeting is adjourned. As the other residents filed out, I caught Karen's eye. For a brief moment, our gazes locked, and I saw the fury burning in her expression. This was far from over, I knew, but for now, the victory was mine. As I left the homeowners association meeting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious triumph. I had stood my ground against Karen's relentless onslaught, and for now, the driveway was safe. But I knew that this was merely the first skirmish in what was sure to be an ongoing battle. Sure enough, as I pulled into my driveway a few days later, I noticed a bright orange flyer fluttering in the breeze. My heart sank as I approached and read the bold text. No to a sea of a violation. Unapproved driva construction. Karen had wasted no time in following through on her threat, and now I was facing the full force of the homeowners association's wrath. The letter demanded that I remove the driveway within 30 days or face escalating fines and potential legal action. Fuming, I stormed into the house, slamming the door behind me. My wife, Sarah, looked up from her book, her brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. I quickly filled her in on the latest development, watching as her expression shifted from confusion to outrage. "That woman is unbelievable," she exclaimed, pacing the living room. "After all the proof you showed, how can they still claim it's unapproved?" I shook my head, my mind racing. "I don't know, but I'm not going to back down without a fight. This driveway was designed by NASA, for heaven's sake. I'll take it all the way to the state legislature if I have to." Sarah paused, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. "I know you will, honey, and I'm right here with you, every step of the way." We spent the rest of the evening poring over the violation notice, brainstorming strategies, and gathering even more evidence to support our case. I was determined to leave no stone unturned, no avenue unexplored. This wasn't just about a driveway anymore. It was about standing up to the tyranny of petty, power-hungry neighbors who thought they could push us around. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the curved, sleek surface of the driveway, I knew that the battle lines had been drawn. Karen had made her move, and now it was my turn. This war was far from over, and I was more than ready to fight. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Sarah and I worked tirelessly to build our case against the Homeowners Association's violation notice. We pored over every document, every email, and every scrap of evidence we could find, determined to leave no stone unturned. Finally, the day of the Homeowners Association meeting arrived, and I took a deep breath as we stepped through the doors. Karen was already there, her eyes narrowed and her lips twisted into a smug grin. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to confront her right then and there. As the meeting got underway, I waited patiently for my turn to speak. When the time came, I stood up, my voice steady and confident. "Esteemed members of the Homeowners Association," I began, "I'm here today to appeal the violation notice that was issued regarding my driveway. As I've already demonstrated, this driveway was designed by NASA engineers to be both functional and aesthetically pleasing. It has been approved by the appropriate authorities, and I have the documentation to prove it. I proceeded to lay out our case, presenting evidence that left no doubt as to the legitimacy of the driveway's design and construction. The other residents listened intently, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to understanding. When I finished, Karen stood up, her face flushed with anger. "This is all a smokescreen," she cried. "He's clearly trying to pull the wool over our eyes with these so-called NASA engineers. It's just another attempt to be different and stand out from the rest of us." But her accusations fell flat, met with only a few scattered murmurs of agreement. The rest of the room seemed unconvinced, their attention focused on the overwhelming evidence I had presented. The board president cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping the room. "Well, it seems the facts are quite clear. The driveway was approved and designed according to proper protocols. I see no reason to uphold the violation notice." A collective sigh of relief washed over me, and I exchanged a triumphant glance with Sarah. We had won. Or so I thought. As the meeting adjourned, Karen stalked over to me, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice laced with venom. "I'll find a way to get that driveway torn up, even if it's the last thing I do." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving me to wonder just what she had up her sleeve. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. In the days that followed the homeowners association meeting, an uneasy calm settled over our neighborhood. Karen had slunk away, licking her wounds, but I knew it was only a matter of time before she struck again. Sure enough, a few weeks later, I received a call from the local city planning department. Apparently, an anonymous complaint had been filed, alleging that my driveway was in violation of some obscure zoning regulation. I gritted my teeth, recognizing Karen's handiwork. She had clearly found a new avenue to attack, and this time, she was pulling out all the stops. Without hesitation, I gathered the necessary paperwork and headed down to City Hall, determined to put an end to this nonsense once and for all. The bureaucrats there were less than pleased to see me, but I refused to back down, presenting my case with a level of tenacity that even surprised me. This driveway was designed by NASA engineers and approved by the Homeowners Association, I argued, slamming the documents onto the desk. "It meets all local zoning and construction codes. You have no grounds to take any action against it." The city planner blinked, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Well, I'll have to look into this further," he stammered, clearly taken aback by my unwavering stance. "You do that," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "And in the meantime, you can tell whoever filed this complaint that they're wasting your time and taxpayer money." With that, I turned and stormed out of the building, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that Karen was behind this latest attack, and I was more determined than ever to put a stop to her relentless crusade. As I drove home, I couldn't help but wonder what her next move would be. Would she try to rally the other neighbors against me? Would she dig up some obscure regulation to have the driveway condemned? The possibilities were endless, and the uncertainty was maddening. But one thing was clear. I was not going to back down. This was my home, my property, and I would fight tooth and nail to protect it. Karen had pushed me too far, and now she would have to face the consequences of her actions. Little did she know, I had a few tricks up my sleeve as well. I was done playing by her rules. It was time to take the fight to her, on my own terms. This war was far from over, and I was more than ready to win. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in our neighborhood continued to simmer, palpable and ever present. I knew that Karen was plotting her next move, but I refused to let her see me sweat. Instead, I bided my time, carefully gathering more evidence and formulating a plan of my own. One day, as I was pulling into my driveway, I noticed a strange car parked on the street, an unfamiliar sit-in with tinted windows. My heart raced as I realized it must be one of Karen's lackeys, keeping an eye on me and my precious driveway. Determined not to let her intimidate me, I marched over to the car and tapped on the window. The driver, a middle-aged man with a greasy smile, rolled it down just a crack. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice dripping with feigned innocence. "Cut the act," I snapped. "I know you're one of Karen's cronies, spying on me. What are you up to?" The man hesitated, his eyes darting around nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled. "Oh, don't give me that," I retorted. "I'm onto you, and I won't let you or Karen get away with this." With that, I turned and strode back to my house, my mind racing. If Karen was going to play dirty, then so be it. I was done playing by the rules. It was time to fight fire with fire. Over the next few days, I set my plan into motion. I called in a few favors, dug up some old contacts, and began to quietly gather information on Karen and her little circle of supporters. What I uncovered was nothing short of shocking. It seemed that Karen and her husband, who just happened to be the president of the Homeowners Association, had been pocketing funds intended for community improvements. They were using their positions of power to line their own pockets, all while masquerading as upstanding citizens. Armed with this explosive information, I knew exactly how to turn the tables on Karen. I would expose her corruption, bring the full force of the law down on her head, and finally put an end to this ridiculous driveway battle once and for all. As I sat back and watched the carefully orchestrated plan unfold, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. Karen had pushed me too far, and now she was about to learn a hard lesson about the consequences of her actions. This war was far from over, but the tide was turning in my favor. The day of the Homeowners Association meeting arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air as I stepped through the doors. Karen and her husband were already there, their faces set in matching expressions of smug confidence. Little did they know, their world was about to come crashing down. As the meeting progressed, I waited patiently for my turn to speak, watching as Karen and her cronies attempted to railroad the other residents with their usual tactics of fear-mongering and misinformation. But this time, I was ready. When the board president finally called on me, I stood up, my voice calm and measured. "Esteemed members of the Homeowners Association," I began, "I'm here today to expose a shocking truth, one that goes far beyond the petty squabble over my driveway." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in as I gazed around the room. Karen's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "It seems that our dear president and his wife, Karen, have been embezzling funds intended for community improvements. Over the past several years, they have redirected thousands of dollars into their own personal accounts, all while convincing us that the money was being used for the greater good." A collective gasp rippled through the room, and Karen leaped to her feet, her face flushed with rage. "This is an outrageous lie," she shrieked. "You have no proof of any wrongdoing." "Oh, but I do," I replied, calmly pulling a stack of documents from my briefcase. "I have bank statements, invoices, and witnesses that all point to a disturbing pattern of financial mismanagement and personal enrichment at the expense of our community." I proceeded to lay out the evidence, methodically dismantling Karen's desperate attempts to defend herself. The other residents listened in stunned silence, their expressions shifting from disbelief to outrage. When I finished, the board president stood up, his face grave. "If these allegations are true, then Mr. and Mrs. Weston, I'm afraid you will be facing some very serious consequences. This association does not tolerate corruption of any kind." Karen's husband opened his mouth to speak, but the president cut him off with a raised hand. "Save it. We'll be conducting a full audit and investigation, and you can be sure the authorities will be involved." As Karen and her husband were escorted from the room, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. The battle had been won, and justice had finally been served. But as I watched them slink away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed the explosive Homeowners Association meeting, the fallout from the Weston family's corruption scandal continued to reverberate through our community. The authorities had swooped in, seizing financial records and interviewing witnesses, and the Westons had been unceremoniously ousted from their positions of power. As for my trusty driveway, it remained intact, a symbol of my hard-fought victory. But even as the dust settled, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. After all, Karen was a woman who thrived on vengeance, and I had no doubt that she was biding her time, plotting her next move. Sure enough, one day, as I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a flyer taped to my front door. My heart sank as I read the bold text. No TVC of MPNDINGLAWS. Karen, it seemed, was not going down without a fight. She had hired a team of high-powered lawyers and was threatening to sue me for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. The nerve of that woman knew no bounds. Steeling myself for the battle ahead, I gathered my documentation and headed to the courthouse, ready to face off against Karen's legal onslaught. But as I made my way through the bustling corridors, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I had the truth on my side, and I was no longer going to play by her rules. When the case finally went to trial, I presented my evidence with unwavering confidence, while Karen and her lawyers desperately grasped at straws, curling one baseless accusation after another. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a keen eye for bullshit, saw through their charade immediately. "This is a clear-cut case of retaliation," she declared, her gavel slamming down with finality. "The defendant has provided ample evidence to support his claims, while the plaintiffs have failed to produce any credible proof to back up their allegations. The case is dismissed." As the courtroom erupted into murmurs, I caught Karen's eye. For a moment, our gazes locked, and I saw the stark realization dawn on her face. She had lost. This war was over, and I had emerged victorious. With a newfound sense of peace, I turned and headed home, my footsteps light and my heart content. The driveway gleamed in the afternoon sun, a testament to the power of perseverance and the triumph of truth over petty spite. And as I looked upon it, I knew that I had not only won the battle, but I had also reclaimed my sense of home, my sanctuary, and my rightful place in this community.